You're fine.
Oh, it's okay. We're recording.
This
We
meeting
just
is being recorded.
there, guys. We just didn't get our notification for some reason. Hello, guys. It's Barbie and Florence
Hi, everybody.
in the Bible. I hope you're doing well. I'm recording outside today, so if I am moving my computer around too much, I apologize. We'll try not to make it like the Blair Witch Project. Make you. Did you ever see that? Made you sick because you were watching it. Um, but anyway,
Mhm.
coming by, we're going to be doing a continuation on Daniel's 70s weeks prophecy, and this is our week number 2 on it. So, Flora, will you want to get started?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Last week, we actually studied Daniel's prayer, and our future studies on Daniel, we're going to start going into the prophecy and how to understand it. But I wanted to give some reminders. Don't forget that on our video last week, we attached the definitions. You definitely are going to need to print that or maybe put it on your screen because for you to understand the prophecy with Daniel, you've got to be able to understand the Hebrew language on some of these words. Um, and we also want to encourage you, to print the transcripts each week. We're just even on this study, we're just getting into it, and I'm trying to simplify it. Me and Barbie both are to make it where it's easy to understand. So we encourage you. You might want to rewatch the videos. Definitely read the transcripts. You might want to print those out until you fully understand the meanings and it starts, kind of coming together. Barbie can tell you we spent a lot of time on Daniel. It's not, you got to dig in before you really have a good, understanding of it. And even putting this together, I'm still learning new things. And I think this is the third or fourth time me and Barbie have studied Daniel together. Um, One reason it's kind of hard to understand is that we're used to our calendars, and that's the Gregorian calendar. We actually have a copy on the screen right now for you to look at. This is what the Jewish calendar looks like, and you can see it's totally different from us. Like right now, they're in Tishri, and you'll notice that's September and October for us. Um,
Flora,
but you,
something real quick too. I just noticed wasn't on this calendar is in the beginning, and the Jews actually did not have names for their calendar. They didn't actually make
Mhm,
names until they were in Babylonian captivity. So Tishri, so
mhm,
sometimes you'll hear where it says month 1, month 2, month 3.
mhm,
Tishri is month 1. Heshvan is month 2. Kislev is 3. Tevet is 4. Shevat is 5. Adair, which I'm saying these all wrong, is 6.
mhm.
Nisan is 7. Ayar is 8. Sivan is 9. Tammuz is 10. Av is 11. And Elul is 12. So just remember, it starts at Tisri, though. Their new year, which is Rosh Hashanah, they just celebrated, starts right here.
Mhm.
I just
And we
noticed
are in
that.
the holiest of their seasons as well, because you have, the all of the fall feasts in this time frame as well. Um, but you can see it's totally different. It's October, September for us, but for them, it's the beginning of the year where we celebrate the beginning of the year in January.
Mhm.
So that's the reason we're providing this, and we're going to put it as a link. Um, Barbie can tell you, me and her both have this printed out, and we refer to it quite a bit because we're not used to it. We grew up with, the Western civilization calendar, the Gregorian calendar. Um,
This is
so
God's
let's
calendar.
It is. And in order to fully understand Revelation and Daniel, you got to dig into Hebrew traditions, their language, their calendars, because it all ties together. Um, so we're going to get started. And I just want to start off by saying Barbie and me both are very excited to do this study with you. Please email us if you have questions. Like I said, this is about the fourth time me and her have studied Daniel together. So um, sometimes the answers to our prayers take months and sometimes years. Daniel didn't have to wait long for an answer to his prayer. And if you didn't watch our video last week, we did a full video studying Daniel's prayer. Very powerful. Um, it's a good example of the way we should pray. So I definitely encourage you, if you haven't watched that, please go back and take a look at it. But Gabriel appeared while Daniel was still praying, and this is what he told them. And you can find this in Daniel 9:23, and I'm reading it from the King James Version. At the beginning of thy supplications, the commandment came forth, and I am come to shew thee, for thou art greatly beloved. Therefore, understand the matter and consider the vision. Gabriel came to Daniel immediately from God. We learned something very important. Gabriel expected Daniel to understand the vision. And the reason he expected Daniel to understand it is, of course, Daniel was Jewish. Daniel grew up with the Jewish calendar, which is what we've got in front of you. So the 70 weeks prophecy is difficult to fully understand today, but Gabriel once again expected Daniel to understand it 2,500 years ago. So why is it difficult for us to understand? And Barbie, I know you can help us to understand this. I'm going to let you take over now.
Okay, I sure can. Yeah, I remember when you and I first started studying this, we were like, I'm so confused. And then finally we realized, wait a second, the reason that, we were so confused was because we grew up on a Gregorian calendar, which I think came from Romans or something, and
Mhm.
this is God's calendar, and God gave this calendar, but we did not study Jewish traditions and history. So before we could even understand, we had to understand the Jewish history. And
Mhm.
Gabriel, he expected Daniel to understand the terms he used and the biblical passages he referenced. He also knew that Daniel would understand the meaning of the vision provided in response to Daniel's prayer. If Daniel can understand this, so can we. Let's get started and again have the definitions in front of you. You will need them. Since I wish I could pull up two, but I can't. I'd pull up both screens. Um, when Gabriel made the following statement, he absolutely expected that Daniel would understand it. And this is Daniel 9:24. 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city to finish the transgression and to make an end of sins and to make reconciliation for iniquity and to bring in everlasting righteousness and to seal up the vision and prophecy and to anoint the most holy. Let's focus on the beginning of this verse first. 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city. Our definition of a week is 7 days, but the Hebrew word found in this verse is shabuim, which means sevens. Daniel understood this as a specific Hebraic meaning. It means a verse of 7 years. The prophetic events that fulfill the shabuim could not be a time period of days, but rather it has to be years. This is the only meaning of shabuim that Daniel would have understood. A shabua, which is singular of shabuim, a very specific unit of time made up of 7 Hebraic years. These years are made up of months based on the cycles of the moon, alternating from 29 to 30 days period. And the years are either 12 or 13 months long based on when the barley becomes ripe in Israel. The common 12-month years are 353 days to 355 days long, depending on the lunar cycle, and the leap year, which will be 13 months. And those are 383 to 385 days long. So when you have a leap year, instead of having the 353 days and 355 days, you'll have 383 to 385 because they're adding an extra month. In our calendar, every 4 years, you just get an extra day because we're only off a quarter of a year, but in the Hebraic, it's different. Okay, so over a 19-year period, there are 235 lunar cycles. So the pattern of Hebraic common years and leap years repeat every 19 years. In addition, this correspondence of solar and lunar cycles permits 19 Hebraic years to equal 19 365-day years that we currently utilize in our secular culture calendar, the Gregorian calendar. Flora, you want to go ahead and finish, go on to the next part?
Sure. By calculating the Hebraic years in this way, they are in sync with both the solar cycles and the lunar cycles. In Genesis, we learned that God designed these cycles for the establishment of years. And this can be found in Genesis 1, verses 14 through 19. And I'm going to read verse 14. And God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years." God also designed these cycles to indicate the timing of the Moedim, or God's appointed times, and that means feast of the Lord. The Moedim that occur in the spring were exactly fulfilled by Jesus at his first coming on the exact day. It is believed that the Moedim that occurs in the autumn will be fulfilled by Jesus in similar manner at his second coming. Any year that does not exactly follow both the solar and lunar cycles will cause the Moedim to fall on incorrect dates. And I know this is a lot to take in, so let's summarize this, maybe in a way that'll make it a little bit more understanding. We grew up learning a number system based on 10. To us, numbers like 10, 50, and 100 are even and logical number units. We call a group of 10 years a decade. Our next larger division of years is the century, which is 100 years. These divisions of numbers are natural to us because this is all that we know, is all we've been taught since we were, in school.
Mm-hmm.
But to understand the 70 weeks prophecy, we have to learn the Hebraic roots of our Christianity. God gave ancient Israel a different numbering system. This system was based on the number 7. It was divided into 6 units of productive labor and 1 unit of rest. God used the same system to organize years for the people of Israel. Israel used a Shabuah of 7 years. For 6 years, there would be productive toil, but for the final year, the sabbatical year, the year of the Lord, or Shemitah, the land would not be tilled or planted. It would lay fallow. So let's look at a graph of what a single Shabuah of 7 years looks like.
Is that the one?
And
this isn't the one.
no, the one we need is the one that just has the one set of blocks on it.
Got it. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay. We got a lot of graphs this time, so y'all bear with us. We have more than we've ever done before. And we are going to put these as attachments on the videos so that if you want to print these out, you'll refer to them quite frequently till you get very used to the words. But this just kind of it visualizes it for you so you understand it a little bit better.
Trying to find that, dear, but I'm not seeing that. Just a single. That's the one with just the week, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry about that. I thought I had.
I think I just named it Shabuah.
What'd you call it?
I think it's named Shabuah. If you can't find it, you can put that other one up and we can go by it.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to have to do because I am not seeing that one for some reason.
That's okay.
So let me.
It might not have come over.
It might not have. I see a bunch of them, but not that one. So sorry about this, guys. Just put this one up again, and then I'll just do the. Whoops.
Okay, if you'll just look at the top line, you'll see that we have 6 white squares, and then you've got 1 square at the end that's highlighted in yellow. This is just a visual to show you the first 6 years are when they would work their land. The yellow square indicates when they're supposed to rest the land. In other words, they're not supposed to plant. They're supposed to let the ground settle for that entire year. This division of years was God's commandment so that the land and the people could rest and rejuvenate during the sabbatical year. And I'm going to read Leviticus 25, 1 through 4. And the Lord spoke unto Moses in Mount Sinai, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, When ye come into the land which I give you, then shall the land keep a Sabbath unto the Lord. 6 years thou shalt sow thy field, and 6 years thou shalt prune thy vineyard, and gather in the fruit thereof. But in the 7th year shall be a Sabbath of rest unto the land, a Sabbath for the Lord. Thou shalt neither sow thy field, nor prune thy vineyard. Only Shabuim, consisting of 7 Hebraic solar lunar years, provide the correct timing of the Moedim and sabbatical years. And only this type of Shabuim would have been understood by Daniel, because that's what he grew up with. We grew up with, once again, the Gregorian calendar. That's why it's so important. You have to understand this to be able to understand the 70 weeks prophecy. Once again, questions, send us an email. If we don't know, we'll study till we find the answer for you. Okay. And Barbie, I'm going to turn it over to you now and let you talk about it a little bit more.
Yeah. And, you know, the 70 weeks of Daniel, if you guys don't know what that is, you're going to, as this course or this study goes along, you're going to understand more and more. But in just a nutshell, what it is back when Daniel was in captivity in Babylon under, well, I guess by the time he did this, he was under either Darius or Cyrus, but he was taken into, the Jews were taken into captivity by Nebuchadnezzar. Well, and the reason they were taken in captivity and why God allowed it was because they were not following any of these rules that we're going to be telling you guys about. They weren't given the land rest. Like if you look at this particular graph, now this is a graph of 49 years or 49 years. We're just wanting you to focus on on this first line right here. So this represents year 1. This represents year 2. This is 3, 4, 5, 6. And then the one here in the yellow is represented as the 7th year. Now, what they were supposed to do is for 6 years, they worked hard, they tilled the land, they did everything. But on the 7th day, they were to give that land rest, including themselves. So they were to give the land rest so that it could replenish itself. And then they were to give their bodies rest by not having to do all the tilling and towing and doing all the stuff that they did. And so, you know, the reason they were taken in captivity is they didn't do that. But we'll learn more about that later. But that's what this is. This is just the 1 week, and it's called the Shemitah cycle. I know we're calling it the Shabuim. Is that another, I'm trying to remember, is that another name for it?
The 1 week, the 7 years, 1 week is considered the Shabuim. But you can call it both. I think the other word, it kind of ties into when you combine the years. I think it's a little bit further in the study.
That's right. Okay. I just want to make sure I call it the right thing because I always say Shemitah.
One thing that came to my mind, Barbie, as you were talking, we said this from the get-go when we first started, that Revelation is from Genesis all the way to Revelation. If you're watching our videos, I think you're starting to kind of pick up 7 is so prominent in the Bible. This starts back in Genesis. It took, God took 6 days. 7th day was rest. Same thing with this calendar and the prophecy of Revelation in the book of Daniel. 6 days work, 7th day rest. Leviticus, it's hard to read sometimes. There's a lot of laws and things like that. But when you really start digging into the Bible, Leviticus actually is kind of fun to read because it starts really tying in things more. So keep that in mind. I don't know why that just stuck out. I needed to say that. But I mean, Genesis is a prime example. 6 days.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Yeah. Yeah. And what you're going to find as we continue studying is that 70 weeks prophecy. You're going to find out that 1 week equals 7 years. So a 70 prophecy actually equals 490 years, 70 times
Mhm.
7. And we're going to be teaching you why that is. But when Daniel gave this prophecy, it will lead us up to the birth of Christ. From the time
Mhm.
of prophecy, around the time of the prophecy until the birth of Christ is going to be 490 years. And we're going to teach you guys how that all worked out, but we have to get through this part first. And one of the reasons that
Mhm.
such a high watch for the rapture this year, not just because of what the crazy world's going through, but because the Israel just started a new Shabuim cycle. The
Mhm.
seventh year was the rest year, and that was last year, and it ended September 26th, and then a new
Mhm.
one started. So we just got out of this part, and we're entering this part now. Now this year they're in this part. So this is till the land, work hard, do all that. They just came out of that year rest. So what is this? 7 years. What is a tribulation? Most people believe a tribulation. Now the great tribulation is the last 3.5 years, but a lot of people believe that there is a 7-year tribulation. And this is going to correspond with that. And you're going to see this. And we're only telling you this now because we want you to stick with us and understand where this is going. Don't give up. Don't get discouraged and
Mhm.
get bored. It took us a couple times to get through this and understand, but you're going to be super excited when you see where it leads you to and how this prophecy 2,500
Mhm.
years ago is where we are right now. And you know how.
One other thing, Barbie, to kind of elaborate what you just said, we're also in a jubilee, which is also important, and we're going to go into that as well. But we also just entered a jubilee as well.
Mhm.
You'll learn about that here in just a few minutes. We're going to be talking about
Yeah, yeah, and so just bear with us, and it's going to take a couple weeks to get it, but all of a sudden it's like driving a straight ship. Once you get it, you will never forget. Okay, because like driving a straight ship. Once you've learned to drive it, you don't forget how to drive one. It's or ride a bicycle. It's going to be the same thing. It's just we're having to turn this hat and learn a different custom than what we are adjusted to. So right now, like I said, we are on this right here, just this 1 week of 7 years. The Jews or Israel just ended that seventh year, and now they've gone back to the first year. So it's back to working again. And it is going to, it also, ties in with that tribulation, 7 years, you know, and it's going to, it ties in with that. Another thing that's interesting is God's timeline is 6,000 years. You go from Adam to Abraham, that's a 2,000 year timeline. From Abraham to Jesus is a 2,000 year timeline. 4,000 years right there. It's almost been 2,000 years since Jesus was crucified. Most people believe that he was crucified, on or about AD 30, give or take. So we are at 2023. 7 years from now will be 2030 or 2030. That is how many years? 2,000. God's timeline is 6,000 years. So you have 6,000 years of working, and then that last 1,000 years, you're in the millennial.
Mhm.
And that's for rest until God comes.
Once again, everything ties together.
Yep, yep. You're going to see all that. And the only reason I'm giving you a little short version of that now is I want y'all to know where it's going to go, where we're going to go with this. Okay.
Mhm.
And so, because I know when her and I first started studying, we were like, what? This is so confusing, but after it all started tying in, it was like, oh my gosh, this is cool. So I'm going to
Mhm.
go now, but I just wanted to give you that. Okay, and it's a lot to learn, but it is very interesting. And once you do, like I said, you're going to be really, really excited you learn this. And we promise we are getting into the prophecy. We're going to demonstrate how 69 of these biblical Shabuim, 69 of the 7 years, provides a precise solution to the countdown of the 70 weeks prophecy. So let's dig a little deeper. A Septuagint, the equivalent term, periods of 7, or hebdomades, is used in both Daniel 9:24 and Leviticus 25:1-4, and is relevant to what we are studying. I have geese flying over my head. Can you hear them?
Yeah.
Hopefully they're not too loud. This
They're
concept,
not. I can hear you.
okay. This concept of a week of Shabuah of years is also older than Leviticus. In Genesis, when Jacob worked for Laban for the right to marry his daughters, Leah and Rachel, Laban referred to a 7 year period as a week. Genesis 29:27. Fulfill her week, and we will give thee this also for the services which thou shalt serve with me yet 7 other years. He's talking about that was Laban, the father of Leah and Rachel. What happened was Jacob fell in love with Rachel and he wanted to marry Rachel. So Laban said, okay, you work for me for 7 years and then I will give you Rachel to marry. Well, instead, he gave him Leah. So then he had to turn around and work for another 7 years. So that's what it's talking about. There is no doubt that the reference in Daniel 9:24 is to weeks, Shabuim of years. And that is what Daniel would have understood. Daniel would understand that the 70-year exile was largely predict, predicated on Israel's neglect of sabbatical years. 2 Chronicles 36:21. We discovered that the Babylonian exile was based on Israel not observing 70 sabbatical years during a 490-year period prior to the exile. God chose a punishment of 70 years so the land could rest for the 70 neglected sabbatical years. So what happened was God had commanded the Israels to do this 1 week. 6 years work the land, seventh year rest. Well, they didn't do it. They just did whatever they wanted. And not only that, they were sacrificing children, pagan idolatry, getting into the pagan world, idolatry, idols, all that. They weren't doing anything that he had said. So, as a punishment, when they went into Babylonian captivity, they gave them a 70-year punishment. God gave them a 70-year punishment. And so it was, so you take, for 70 years, they didn't honor that 1 year, that seventh year, for 70 cycles, which was 490 years. They did not honor it. So every 7 years, they didn't let the land rest. They just kept on going. Then they wouldn't celebrate the next cycle. And then that next 7 years, and then 7 years, and then 7 years, till all of a sudden they were at 490 years and they missed 70 of those rest periods. So that's why they were punished for 70 years in exile in Babylon. And while they were being punished, the land was able to refurbish itself and regrow and get, nutrients and what it needed that God originally had told them it needed to be done. And they were warned too. If you ever read Jeremiah or Isaiah, you can see where God warned them this is going to happen. And they didn't listen to them. And so that's why they were taken into exile. So now we're going to read Leviticus 26:34-35. Then shall the land enjoy her Sabbath, as long as it lieth desolate, and ye be in your enemies' lands, even then shall the land rest, and enjoy her Sabbaths. As long as it lieth desolate, it shall rest, because it did not rest in your Sabbaths when you dwelt upon it. So he's telling them. And the Lord spake unto Moses in Mount Sinai, saying, this is Leviticus 25:1-4. And the Lord spake unto Moses in Mount Sinai, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, When you come into the land which I give you, then shall the land keep a Sabbath unto the Lord. 6 years shalt thou sow thy field. Oh, Flora, I didn't mean to read that again. I'm so sorry. I'm just messing up today.
You're fine.
You should
I
have
was looking,
stopped
I was
me.
like, maybe I got a page out of order here.
No, I'm so sorry. I'm like, I think I've heard that before. I'm sorry, guys. I'm back from my daughter's wedding, and I guess I got a little tired than I thought. I apologize. Okay, so let's move on. We will learn
You're fine.
70 Shabuim of the 70 weeks prophecy. God would redeem Israel with 70 additional sabbatical years, creating a perfect symmetry. We illustrate the symmetry of the 70 weeks prophecy in our next graph. Is this the one?
Is that one titled The Symmetry of Sabbatical Years?
No, let me get that.
Okay.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, I'm going to get that shared real quick. All right, there we go. You see that okay, Flora?
Yeah, it came up perfect.
Okay, good. There you go. All right, so how would these 70 Shabuim by anything but sabbatical cycles of years? There were 70 sabbatical cycles of sin, which led to 70 years of punishment. Gabriel told Daniel that God would then provide 70 more sabbatical cycles to bring about an end to sin. It's no wonder the 70 weeks prophecy is regarded as the most important prophecy in the Bible. Okay, so basically, when you're looking at this, Israel is as a kingdom ignoring the sabbatical and jubilee years. Okay, so they missed 70 of those sabbatical years where they were supposed to give the land rest. So that was a total of 490 years because you take 70 times the 7 years. So that's 490 years that they did not take a rest. Okay, and so it was 70 sabbaticals that they missed, which is also 70 years because it's about the seventh, it's a year. The seventh year or the sabbatical is a year. So they missed 70 years. Does that make sense, Flora? Did I say that right?
Yeah, you did. It's perfect.
Okay. And so when they were taken into captivity in Babylon, God gave Daniel this prophecy, and he is going to use the exact same timetable to bring in a new Messiah. So we're going to do another 70 sabbaticals, which is 70 times 7, 490 years. So he used what they did wrong here when they were sinning so much, and they were, pagan, idolatry, everything. And they were sinning so much and not honoring what God had told them to do if he brought them into the promised land. That's how they ended up not doing what they were supposed to do for 490 years, and they were not honoring that 7th year of rest for 490 years, which was 70 times they didn't do it. So it was 70 times 7. So when they're giving Daniel this prophecy, God's like, okay, so this is what you did wrong, and now I'm going to show you what we're going to do to take away sin. And he's using the same exact formula. He's going to use 70 sabbaticals or 70 years times 7, which is 490 years. And I know this is sounding a little bit kind of weird right now, but I promise it's going to make sense, okay? So, Flora, you want to go get started on do the next part?
One thing I'd like to add to what Barbie was saying too, where we talked about the end of sin. When the Messiah comes, that's the end of sin at that point, on the second coming. Just like I said, this all ties together. So just kind of keep that in mind. Daniel would have understood this perfectly because he would have understood that the cause of the 70-year exile here in the middle were the 70 missed sabbatical cycles. There is absolutely no doubt that he also would have understood the meaning of the additional 70 sabbatical years when these were suggested by Gabriel, and that's on the far right-hand side. In addition to all the biblical references we have reviewed today, there is extensive extra biblical evidence. The word Shabuim or weeks is used in exactly this manner in the book of Jubilees. The Hebrew version of this book was unknown until the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, which occurred in 1947-48. Remember, 1948 is when Israel became a nation. 15 copies of this Hebrew manuscript, which included the word Shabuim, were found, and they clearly support our studies that this word is a reference to a 7-year period. Because this organization of time was a system based on 7, God commanded Israel to organize years into 7 sevens or 7 Shabuim sabbatical year groupings. Let's read Leviticus 25:8. And thou shalt number 7 Sabbaths of years unto thee, 7 times 7 years. And the space of the 7 Sabbaths of years shall be unto thee 40 and 9 years. And Barbie, can you pull up the graph for me that's titled 7 Sevens or Shabuim?
Yes, I am working on that right now. There we go. You see that okay?
This is coming up now. I'm gonna wait for it to pop up on the screen. Good. There we go. This is the graph we had up just a moment ago. And this one is critically important to studying the 70 weeks prophecy. These 7 sevens, in other words, we've got 7 years for each line, okay, are the building blocks of all longer periods of time in Hebraic thought. At the end of this period of 7 sabbatical year cycles, so all the yellow blocks here, that would be the end of the period. 49 years, God commanded Israel to observe a jubilee, and that is always observed in the 50th year. You can find that in Leviticus 25, verses 8 to 10. And thou shalt number 7 Sabbaths of years, the yellow blocks here, 7 times 7 years, and the space of the 7 Sabbaths of years shall be unto thee 40 and 9 years. Then shalt thou cause the trumpet of the Jubilee to sound on the 10th day of the 7th month in the Day of Atonement, which they've just recently had. And shall ye make the trumpet sound throughout all your land. And ye shall hallow the 50th year and proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. It shall be a jubilee unto you, and ye shall return every man unto his possession, and ye shall return every man unto his family. And Barbie, if you wouldn't mind, if you can pull up the graph titled Jubilee Year, and then I'm going to let you explain the Jubilee if you don't mind.
Yeah, thanks. No, I'm just teasing. Yeah, so you guys can see that first week right here, that was the Shabuim. Okay, it's a week of 7 years. Jubilee is a week of 49 years. Well, it's a week of 49 years. So as you can see, you got 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, 42, and 49. And so right here, that's the 49th year. Well, the Jubilee year is celebrated for the 50th year. So once you get through the 49th year, which the Israelites just got through the 49th year, and the 50th year started around October 6th-ish, give or take a few days. And so throughout that 50 year, that this year is a Jubilee celebration. So you got 49 years, and then on the following, and then when the following year comes through, that's your 50th year. But you also start counting again for the 49 years. So you basically the 50th year and the first year are the one and the same. So you you celebrate during the 50th year, but that's also starting the first year to continue counting. So even though they just celebrated their 50th Jubilee and they're in that, they also just started the first year to get ready for the next one. Is that making sense how I'm explaining that, Flora?
Yeah. Yep.
That's a tough one to understand.
That Jubilee graph, if you could pull that up, I think that would help too, to kind of tie in what you just went over. I think I kind of highlighted to kind of make them kind of see what you're talking about just now, where it's one and the same.
There you go. Yeah, so you can see right here, this starts the first year, right? And you go all the way through this, and then this is your 49th year. And then you start here, and that's your 50th year, but it's also starting the first year of that cycle again. Hope that making sense. Okay. Jubilee is the first year of the next cycle. This makes sense scripturally and allows for a continuous cycle of 49-year groupings. The Jubilee years do not interrupt the normal flow of years, allowing each 7th year to be a sabbatical year. Makes sense. Greatest support for a continued cycle of 49 years constituting a Jubilee cycle is found in the ancient Book of Jubilees, which we've already spoken about. The Book of Jubilee clearly utilizes a series of 49 years as a Jubilee cycle. A book about Jubilee cycles that was so highly regarded could not be an error about the manner by which the Jews accounted for Jubilee around the time of Jesus. Now, one of the things that when they found the Book of Jubilees, they found it, like Flora said, around the time that they found the Dead Sea Scrolls in like 1947, 1948. And all this, I mean, majority of Jewish scholars and even Christian scholars say that that is a very trustworthy source book, that it is very trustworthy, and that they feel that it is very accurate in how scripturally things should be done. So a lot of scholars use the Book of Jubilees. Okay, so we're about to close out this week's study, but I thought this would also be interesting to share with you. The number 7 and the concept of holiness. The 7th day is Shabbat. The 7th month is Tishri, which we showed y'all on the calendar. Has 3 festivals during Tishri: Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot, which are these are the fall festivals that were not fulfilled yet. In fact, I will go ahead and pull up that calendar one more time, because I don't know if they're like us. They probably, if they've not studied this before, they probably are like us and never had seen one. So I'm going to pull that up again.
Okay.
Just so while we're talking about it, they can see it. Hang on just a second. It takes me a second to get to that. There we go.
That's on.
Okay, so we're
It's coming up. I've got it. It's showing now.
Showing now? Okay. So right here is Tishri. And so you can look at here. Tishri is also month number 1. And you can see right here on the Gregorian calendar that they celebrate this between September and October. And we'll explain later how they figure out which month, September, October. That, you know, we'll explain that part later. Okay, so the 7th year is also called the Shemitah, and Jubilee marking the completion of 7 7-year cycles. We just started Jubilee this year. And why is the Jewish calendar for what is the Jewish calendar for 2022? It may say 2022 on the Gregorian calendar, but we are actually in the 5783, 5,783 years according to the Jewish calendar. Now, our calendar, like Flora says that we are in year 2023. Wait, what? 2022. I don't even know what year we're in. 2022. We got 2023 is coming. I got that on my mind because I'm starting to focus on next year. 2022, you know, we say that is our year because that's about the time that our calendar started, which would have been around 20 years or so after Jesus died. Jews started their calendar back all the way back to close to Adam, basically Adam. Okay, and we'll explain why let me explain why there's a little discrepancy and why it's not close to 6,000 years, like we said earlier. The Jewish or Hebrew calendar is a lunar solar calendar, and the months are based on lunar months, but years are based on solar years, and is the official calendar that they use in Israel. We are only 270 days from the 6,000 years, and many believe scripturally that the last 1,000 years will be in the millennium. Okay. Now, as far as the calendar saying 5,783 years old, and earlier we mentioned that a lifespan is 6,000. Well, if God's going to give us 6,000 years on the earth before the Daniel 70 weeks starts, which is the same thing as the tribulation, it's also called Jacob's trouble, has 3 names: 70 weeks of Daniel, Jacob's trouble, and the 7-year tribulation. Okay, it's all the same thing. When you hear those words, it's all the same thing. So if they're 5,783 years, then that means we should have 217 more years left on this earth, right? Before the before the tribulation starts, before we hit 6,000 years old. No. And the reason is because right after the Jewish tabernacle or the Jewish temple was destroyed in AD 70, it wasn't right after, but around AD 132, people were really beginning to realize that they missed the Messiah, the Jews, because they don't believe that the Messiah has come. They believe they're still waiting on it. And so there was a rabbi, one of the head rabbis, and I can't recall his name on top of my head, but basically he found a guy and he started presenting him as the Messiah. Well, the only way to do that would be to get those dates right. Okay. And this was born exactly when the 70 weeks of Daniel, the 490 weeks from the Daniel prophecy until Jesus coming was perfect. And you'll see this as we go along. It was perfect. Okay. There was no time missed. Well, guess what? They denied him. He was crucified. He rose from the dead. He predicted and prophesied that the temple would be destroyed. And indeed it was 35, 40 years later, but it was. So they had to do something to cover up for that. So in AD 132, that's when they did. But they had to change the dates in order to make people believe this new guy was the Messiah. And this new guy, I have to look up the names and stuff, that they said was the Messiah, was actually killed in war. Now, so there goes your Messiah, but not before they took and messed up 210 years. Okay, and there's more to it. You can do some research on it, but there's more to it. So they actually missed 210 years. So if you take 5,783 and you add 210 years to that, it makes the calendar, it really should be 5,993 years old. That is given us 7 years left to the 6,000 year mark. Okay, so that 210 years is missing because they had to cover up for messing up about who the Messiah was. And of course, once he was killed in war, they realized that was wrong again. And so now they believe they're still waiting on the Messiah. Okay.
Barbie, if you don't mind, I'd like to put something in right here where you were talking about they were claiming he was the Messiah. It's been in the news quite a bit on some videos that me and Barbie watch, and you can look this up too. YouTube, just type in Messiah in Israel, and
You'll
the videos will pop up. The rabbis over there are saying that they're actually talking to the Messiah right now. If you haven't watched our Matthew 24 and you don't know Matthew 24 very well, Jesus, out of his own mouth, said you're going to have Antichrist, not one. You're going to have multiple ones coming out to deceive you.
Multiple false messiahs and multiple false prophets.
Mm-hmm.
Said plural.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say Antichrist. I meant Messiah.
Yeah. Because unfortunately, a lot of Christians are going to think he's the Antichrist, and I don't think he is. I think he's going to be a false Messiah. And one of the false messiahs Jesus talks about, when he says it in plural form. He does not say it in singular. So it's not one, it's many false messiahs, many false prophets. And I think the guy is going to be a false messiah, possibly a false prophet, or both. But they're actually waiting on two messiahs, one that's more politically type person and one that's more loving and that kind of thing. So I think they're actually waiting on two. But yes, they are saying they're speaking to one right now. And I'm afraid they're going to be confused. They're going to be tricked, Well,
I brought it up too because I don't want anyone to be deceived. And I apologize. I said Antichrist. I meant Messiah.
You're fine.
But, it's going to be very easy to be deceived. That's just like right now, there's a lot of prophets and Jesus also said this, be aware of false prophets. prophets as well. Right now, and I'm not saying anything you don't know, because if you're watching the news, there's just so much going on that's evil, and there's so many people that are just buying into it and following that road. Do not be deceived. You need to be close with the Lord right now. Work on your prayer life, because it's going to be easy to be deceived in the end times, and I firmly believe that we're in them. And I'll let you take back over, Barbie.
Oh no, you're fine. I'm getting the gnat out of my face. You're perfectly fine. Do whatever you got to do. But yeah, that's basically right. Yes, they are reporting big time about this false Messiah. They call it the Jewish Messiah, but we all know, as Christians, that it's the false Messiah. And when you look at Israel actually being 5,993 years old, and I'm fixing to give a little more information on that 6,000-year timeline, we're 7 years. So it's just another interesting.
And once again, go back to what we learned, just a few minutes ago. 6,000 years, 6 years of planning. 7th year is your sabbatical. I'm not sabbatical, but your year of rest.
Sabbatical.
Yeah, the millennial. I mean, you're looking at this, and once again, that number 7 comes up. 7 is prominent with God. It's perfect timing.
It means completion.
Yep.
It does. Okay, so I'll give you a little bit more information on the timeline of the years, about 6,000 years. The vast majority of the people in the world today have never heard about the plan of God. God has put into place the 7,000-year master plan, which began at the creation of Earth almost 6,000 years ago. This plan is pictured in type by the 7-day week. Genesis 1:3-31 shows us that God created the earth in 6 days and then created the 7th day, Sabbath, by resting on it. Hence the sabbatical years, and that's in Genesis 2:2-3. God is allowing man to work 6 days, which is 6,000 years, followed with the 7th-day rest, a 1,000-year sabbatical Sabbath rest. Sabbatical or Sabbath rest. And I believe it was Peter who said a year is like 1,000, a day is like 1,000 years. And he's speaking of this millennium, the 7,000-year lifespan is what he's talking about. And I'm sorry. The Apostle Peter wrote, here we go. Here's the verse. With the Lord, 1 day is 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as 1 day. 2 Peter 3:8. No doubt he understood that the 7-day week pictured the 7,000-year plan of God. Paul also had this in mind when he instructed that the 7th day of the week pictures the millennial rule of Christ that will allow this present evil age of human misrule. And that's in Hebrews 4:3-11. This day will occur after Christ's intervention, and it will last 1,000 years. Revelation 20:1-4. You can also find references to this principle in Psalms 9:4 and Hosea 6:2. The 7th day of the week symbolizes the 1,000-year rulership of Jesus Christ. Thus, the first six days of the week picture 6,000 years of man governing himself to work out his own ideas and plans. Each day of the week represents a 1,000-year period. Historical records indicate that almost 6,000 years have elapsed since the recreation of the earth and almost 2,000 years since the death of Jesus Christ. Man's week is nearly over, and God's great Sabbath rest will soon be here. Are you ready?
And that's our prayer that you are. If you have questions, please reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you.
Yeah, and so basically, in a nutshell, right, Flora, what God did was he started the earth and he worked for 6 days and he rested on the 7th day. Okay, so that is the same guideline that he gave the Jews in the Old Testament. 6 years, rest on the 7th, same thing. And then he also is doing the lifespan like that. 6 years of work, 6,000 years of work, rest on the 7,000th year, which is when we'll be in the millennial. So everything is tying together. Yeah, I mean, that is just something that he has used in the beginning. Yeah, it's cool, you know. So
It is.
and as we go along, guys, you'll understand more and more and more. This will all just come into play. Now, if you've studied some Jewish customs before, then it's probably totally understandable. But if you haven't, it might take a little time, and don't feel defeated.
Mm-hmm.
So
and it'll definitely come more together the more studies we do. But this week we wanted to make sure you got the calendar and what a Shabuim was and what a Jubilee is, and that's why we mentioned at the very beginning of the video how important those definitions are, because they'll help you with this.
And I actually put a link up in our first annual video, and you can actually you can go to our playlist. I put playlists together on our YouTube channel now, and it'll say our Revelation 101 series. It's going to show you our John series, our Revelation 201 series, and it's going to give you a playlist for our updates as well. So it's for easier finding, so you don't have to go through every single one of our videos. And so that's all you have to do. And let me look at this real quick, and then I'll let you know exactly where I think I did an actual Daniel, but I might have put it under the 201. So give me just a second. And this way I'm trying to make it easier to find things. Okay, it's under the Revelation 201.
Thank you for getting that organized, Barbie.
Oh, you're fine. It's under the Revelation 201 series. When you look at our playlist, you'll see Study of John, updates, Revelation 201. It's under the Revelation 201. And so just go in there and you can find our first video to the Daniel series. And then you can find the link to all those definitions. And I can also leave it in here again too, but you only get so much room to leave stuff. So,
yep.
Okay, so I'm good. Do you want to? Do you have anything else you want to say? I'm sorry, I'm a little bit not 100% here today. My daughter got married this weekend, and got my booty wore out. I am pooped. But this was a great second week. I really appreciate you doing this. Look, it sounds really good. And we're getting ready to do one probably in the next week. We're almost done with it. It is on how the 7 seals and the 7 churches in Revelation plus Matthew 24, how those are all actually the same thing. It's going to be quite interesting. So we'll have that up in the next week. So I'm looking forward. And then we'll also have Daniel, our third part of this study, next Monday. So you got anything, Flora? I'm good.
I'm excited to see the study. Barbie's been working on it, on the 7 churches and the seals. So I'm excited to see that as well. Like I said, guys, just please reach out to us if you have any questions. We may not know the answer right away, but we will definitely help you find it. Okay. And we can definitely pray with you. And but why don't we, if you're okay, Barbie, we'll go ahead and just close out in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we just thank you so much for this time that we've had to study your word this afternoon. We pray that, Lord, you would give everyone discernment as they watch this, help them to understand, and help them to realize, we ended the study with, are you ready? And we want everyone to be ready. That's the whole purpose of this, is to give you glory and hopefully, to lead people to you, and where they will accept you into their heart. And if we do have someone that's, watching today and you feel like, you believe that Jesus died on the cross for your sins, that he rose again, that he covered your sins with his blood, and you want to ask him into your heart, just repeat this prayer with me. Lord, I know I'm a sinner. I ask that you please come into my heart. Please forgive me of all of my sins. And Lord, help me to grow in your word by studying. Help me to pray and develop a one-on-one relationship with you. and just help me to fellowship with other Christians so that they can help me in my growth as well. And if you prayed that prayer, Lord, we ask that they would just reach out to us. Let us try to help them with their development, and just guide them any way that we can as their brother, as their sisters in Christ. And Lord, we just thank you once again for your word. We thank you, and it's a pleasure to study it. And it amazes me. It is a master plan, and you have to study to fully understand. And we thank you, Lord. Lord, I pray that you would bless each and every person watching this, help their families, help their friends, anything that's going on in their lives that they need help with. Lord, I pray that you would just touch them and bless them. We give you all praise and glory. In your precious name I pray. Amen.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And we appreciate you guys stopping by. And guys, don't get discouraged. Even if the rapture did not happen like so many people were hoping it was going to happen this year, as we've already told you guys, plan on the end. And that way, if it doesn't happen, you're prepared. And if it does happen, yay. But plan as if it's the end. And also plan that we only got about 6 or 7 years left on this earth. Plan that. And if for some reason we're wrong, that's okay. Think about how many people you witnessed to, how many people you told about Christ, and don't get your hopes too set up on the pre-trib. I mean, I pray it is. I don't want to be here, but I'm planning as if it's the end, that we got about 6.5 or so more years so that my family can be ready. So y'all just don't get too discouraged. It's gonna happen. Jesus didn't tell, he says we won't know the day or hour. He doesn't say we don't know the season, and that we could not calculate and estimate and find out, how close we are in years and how close we are in months. And he didn't say we couldn't do that. But what he did say was he is coming again. And there's no doubt he is coming again. So we know it's going to happen. And, some people believe his ministry was from 80-28 to 80-31. But some people believe it was 80-26 to 80-29, based off time frames. You can only calculate as close as you can get because, we didn't have social media back 2,000 years ago, or Google, I should say. 2,000 years ago, you could just go in and search when something happened. So you have to kind of estimate it by what was going on in the word. When they say something in the word about this person was the what do they call Pharaoh, or the what do they call him, the king, or all that. You kind of could only go to your history books at that point and find out, okay, this person was the king at this point in time. This person was this person. So you can definitely get close to the estimation. Yeah, but not going to be perfect on it. So, but yeah, you're looking at Israel's, the Jews is looking at the in your face. I hope this ain't recording.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, sorry. I had a dog. But anyway, based off the Israel calendar, it says, going by the Jewish calendar, it says 5,993 days, give or take, because we know they're off about 210 years based off of what happened back in 132. But if you look at their calendar from when they became a nation, the fig tree generation, in May 1948, that makes them 74 and a half years old now. So technically we got 6.5 years, because a generation is 70 to 80 years. So, you look at either way that they're calendared, and it's about the same time frame. So,
Yep.
Yeah. So Flora, you got anything left? I'm in a.
No, please come back. We've got the study Barbie's doing, and then I'm also working on week 3 of Daniel. We're excited to have you join us, and we hope you come back. Share this with your friends. Get the word out. Like Barbie just mentioned, I personally don't believe we have much longer. I'm not, come Lord Jesus, come. That's the way I feel.
Maranatha.
Maranatha.
Maranatha. That's right. Okay, guys, and I'll be doing some at least a couple updates this week. My daughter's wedding is now officially over, so I can get back, being a little bit more diligent. So I appreciate you guys so much. If you would hit subscribe, we'd appreciate you, share, like, all that good stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you next time.